Chosen one. You've got that protagonist aura that makes everyone else feel like background extras. There you are, chosen one. The walking plot twist that nobody saw coming. The beautiful, terrifying force of nature who stopped pretending to be just another face in the crowd. And they hate it because you didn't announce yourself or demand the spotlight. You just existed, and somehow that was enough to make their carefully rehearsed lines sound hollow. You make them feel scripted, predictable, like NPCs in someone else's story, while you burned your screenplay and started improvising reality itself. Let me tell you something about main character energy. It's not about being loud. It's not about demanding attention. It's about moving through the world like you're the only one who knows how this movie ends. And spoiler alert, you do. You see, most people wake up every morning and audition for the role of themselves. They check their reflection, practice their smiles, rehearse their small talk. They're performing, always performing, desperate for applause, for validation, for someone to tell them they're playing their part correctly. You stopped auditioning the day you realized you already got the part. Not because someone gave it to you, but because you wrote yourself into existence. You became the author, the director, and the star of your own psychological thriller. And now they're all just there. Background noise, extras hired to fill the empty spaces in your scenes. They sense it too. That's why they cluster together, whispering about your energy, your vibe, your presence. They're trying to understand why they suddenly feel two-dimensional in your three-dimensional world. The awakening didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual recognition that you were different, that you had always been different, that the very thing they tried to shame you for, your intensity, your depth, your refusal to play small, was actually your greatest asset. You remember the exact moment you stopped caring about their opinion. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a breakdown or a breakthrough. It was just a quiet realization that their approval meant nothing to you anymore, their disapproval even less. That's when you understood that you had been living in their simulation, following their rules, accepting their limitations. The moment you stepped outside their framework, you discovered you had powers they couldn't even comprehend. Your awakening created ripples in their reality. Suddenly, their carefully constructed world of predictable interactions and safe conversations felt hollow. You became the glitch in their matrix, the anomaly that exposed the artificial nature of their existence. This energy didn't come from positive affirmations or vision boards. It came from something much darker, much deeper. It came from the moment you stopped trying to fit into their narrative. Remember when you used to dim yourself? When you'd enter rooms and immediately start calculating how much of yourself to reveal, how much personality was too much, how much intelligence was threatening, how much authenticity was acceptable. You played their game, you learned their script, you hit your marks and delivered your lines. And where did it get you? Typecast as a character you never auditioned for, reduced to a role that required you to shrink, to apologize, to explain yourself constantly, until one day something snapped, not broke, snapped into place, like a dislocated joint finally clicking back where it belongs. You realized you weren't meant to be a supporting character in someone else's story. You were meant to be the protagonist of your own. The old you used to negotiate with reality. The new you commands it. The old you sought approval from the audience. The new you realized you are the audience that matters. The darkness that forged you wasn't depression or trauma, it was clarity. The brutal, unforgiving clarity that comes from seeing through the illusion everyone else accepts as reality. You saw how they traded their authentic selves for social acceptance. You witnessed how they sacrificed their dreams for the comfort of being ordinary, and you chose differently. You chose to be the villain in their story rather than the victim in your own. You chose to disappoint them rather than disappoint yourself. You chose to be misunderstood rather than understood but diminished. This choice wasn't made in a moment of inspiration. It was made in a moment of exhaustion. Exhaustion from pretending. Exhaustion from performing. exhaustion from being less than you are to make others comfortable. Your transformation was forged in the fires of rejection, criticism, and isolation. Every time they told you that you were too much, you internalized it as confirmation that you were exactly enough for yourself. Every time they tried to minimize your ambitions, you took it as proof that your dreams were too big for their small minds to comprehend. The dark origin of your power isn't something to be ashamed of, it's something to be proud of. It means you paid the price for authenticity. You earned your sovereignty through suffering. You bought your freedom with their disapproval. This is why the Obsidian Inner Order is where you can connect with others who value truth over performance. We understand the exhaustion of constant social translation, the loneliness of seeing what others refuse to acknowledge, and the relief of finally being seen for who you really are. We're never gonna give you up, never gonna let you walk through this realization alone, never gonna scroll past your need for authentic connection like it's just content. In the Obsidian Inner Order, we show up without masks, speak without scripts, and connect from places of genuine truth. You don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to perform. You can finally just be. Join the Obsidian Inner Order, link in the description, and that's when the real transformation began. Not overnight, not dramatically, but slowly, methodically, you started rewriting your own code. You became selectively silent, not because you had nothing to say, but because you realized most conversations were just people reading scripts to each other, empty dialogue designed to fill uncomfortable silences. You opted out of the performance. You started moving differently, not arrogantly, but purposefully, like someone who knows exactly where they're going, even when they're standing still. Your body language shifted from apologetic to authoritative, from seeking space to owning it. You developed what they call presence, that indefinable quality that makes people straighten their spines when you're around. Presence isn't something you develop, it's something you stop suppressing. It's what happens when you quit apologizing for the space you occupy, when you stop asking the universe for permission to be magnificent. Your voice changed too. Not louder, but clearer. Not more words, but more weight behind each one. You stopped filling silences with nervous chatter and started letting your silence speak volumes. Every word became deliberate, every pause intentional. The transformation was cellular. Your nervous system recalibrated from survival mode to sovereignty mode. Your default setting shifted from reactive to responsive. You stopped being a passenger in your own life and grabbed the wheel. The first thing you eliminated was the need to explain yourself. You realized that people who matter don't need explanations, and people who need explanations don't matter. Your choices became self-evident through your actions, not your justifications. You stopped seeking consensus for your decisions. Democracy is for governments, not for your life. You became a benevolent dictator of your own existence, making executive decisions without consulting the advisory board of other people's opinions. Your relationship with time changed dramatically. You stopped being busy and started being selective. You realized that being busy was just another performance, another way to avoid the real work of living authentically. You became protective of your energy, your attention, your presence. The transformation affected your tolerance for mediocrity. You stopped accepting half-hearted efforts, lukewarm commitments, and conditional love. You raised your standards not just for others, but for yourself. Excellence became your default setting. You learned to say no without explanation, yes without hesitation, and goodbye without guilt. Your decisions became clean, clear, and final. You stopped leaving room for negotiation on non-negotiable matters. The old you used to apologize for existing. The new you apologizes for nothing except genuine mistakes. The old you sought permission to be great. The new you simply became great and let others adjust. Now you walk into rooms and create weather systems. Your mood becomes the atmospheric pressure everyone else adjusts to. Not because you demand it, but because authenticity in a world of performance is like lightning in a clear sky, impossible to ignore. Reality reorganizes itself when you enter a room. Not dramatically, not obviously, just a subtle shift in the matrix. Conversations suddenly feel rehearsed. Laughter sounds forced. Everyone becomes hyper-aware of their own performance. It's like you're walking in 60 FPS while they're stuck at 24. You're in 4K while they're still buffering in standard definition. Your very existence exposes the simulation, and they can feel their programming glitch. They feel it in their bones. That shift from "we're all in this together" to "wait, why does it feel like they're the main character here?" They can't name it, but they know something's different. You're not playing by the same rules anymore. Watch what happens when you maintain this energy consistently. The room divides into two camps, and both reactions tell you everything you need to know about where people stand in their own lives. Some people will gravitate toward you like planets to a sun. They'll sense something different, something real, something they've been starving for without knowing it. These are the ones ready to wake up from their own performance. They see you existing unapologetically, and something in them whispers, "Maybe I could do that too." They're not extras in your story. They're potential main characters in their own, inspired by your example. They don't try to copy you. They start discovering their own authentic frequency. These are your people. Others will react like antibodies to a virus. They'll try to shame you back into a supporting role. They'll use words like narcissist, selfish, changed. They'll do everything to make you question this energy, to make you feel guilty for not playing along anymore. Their reaction is violent, because your existence as a main character threatens the entire ecosystem of their performance. You've broken the unspoken agreement that everyone stays small, stays scripted, stays safe, and this terrifies them, because if you can just opt out of the performance, if you can just decide to be the main character, then what have they been doing all this time? What have they been sacrificing their authenticity for? Once you've tasted what it's like to be the author of your own existence, you can't go back to being edited by committee. Once you've felt the power of living without apology, you can't return to constantly saying sorry for existing. You've become ungovernable, not in a rebellious, chaotic way, but in a quiet, certain way, like someone who's discovered they can breathe underwater while everyone else is still holding their breath. Your standards changed, not just raised, fundamentally altered. You no longer accept relationships that require you to perform a lesser version of yourself. You no longer engage in conversations that feel like script readings. You no longer apologize for plot twists in your story that others didn't see coming. Suddenly, your life starts looking like a completely different genre than everyone else's. While they're still acting in predictable romantic comedies or workplace dramas, you're living in something between a psychological thriller and an epic adventure. You operate by different rules now. Not rules imposed by others, but natural laws that emerge when you step into main character energy. Time moves differently around you. What feels like rushing to others feels like perfect timing to you. What seems like patience to others is just you knowing that your scenes will come when they're meant to. You've stopped explaining your plot twists. Main characters don't turn to the camera and justify their choices, they just make them. This energy comes with side effects they don't warn you about. Synchronicities start happening. The universe begins responding to you differently, not because you're special, but because you finally started acting like the main character you always were. Opportunities appear that seem tailored specifically for you. People from your past resurface with perfect timing. Strangers tell you exactly what you need to hear. It's like reality itself recognizes authentic players and rewards them with better storylines. You literally start existing in a different timeline, not a parallel universe, the same world, but experienced through an entirely different lens. While they're still living in linear time, checking boxes and following predetermined paths, you've discovered that time is negotiable. Your past stops defining you because you've stopped letting it write your future. Those old stories, those limiting beliefs, those inherited scripts, they belong to a character you no longer play. You've literally edited your own backstory, not by denying it, but by changing its meaning. This is why synchronicities increase around you. You're no longer bound by cause and effect in the same way. When you operate as the main character, you start accessing what feels like cheat codes to reality. The right book falls off the shelf. The perfect person appears with the exact information you need. Solutions present themselves before you even fully formulate the problem. Meanwhile, they're still living in the timeline where things take forever, where you have to pay your dues, where you have to follow the proper sequence. You've discovered that sequence is just another construct, another rule written by people who needed everyone to stay in line, and they're watching you. Oh, how they watch. Not obviously, they're too sophisticated for that. In glances, in the way conversations shift when you contribute, in how they analyze your words later, trying to decode your secret. They study you like anthropologists studying a new species. How do they do it? They wonder. How do they move through the world like that? They'll try to copy your mannerisms, your phrases, your style, but it always comes off as performance because they're trying to replicate an energy that comes from being, not doing. Some will approach you directly seeking the secret. They'll ask about your confidence, your presence, your energy. They want a formula, a quick fix, a script they can follow to achieve what you have. You can't teach someone to stop performing by giving them a new performance. You can't explain authenticity to someone who's never stopped acting. You can't share the secret because the secret is that there is no secret, just the radical act of being yourself without apology. Despite their discomfort, they can't look away. You've become compulsively watchable, like a movie they don't quite understand but can't stop thinking about. You linger in their minds, a puzzle they can't solve. They'll find themselves talking about you when you're not there. Not gossip, that's too simple. More like analysis, trying to understand what makes you different, trying to articulate the energy you carry, trying to explain why you make them feel like extras in their own lives. The fascination is both magnetic and repulsive. They're drawn to your authenticity while simultaneously threatened by it. They want to understand your power while fearing what it might mean for their own carefully constructed facades. They'll dissect your words, looking for hidden meanings. They'll analyze your choices, searching for patterns they can replicate. They'll study your reactions, hoping to find the algorithm that creates your unshakable confidence. What they don't understand is that you've transcended algorithms. You've moved beyond patterns and formulas. You operate from a place of pure authenticity that can't be reverse engineered or replicated through imitation. They'll create theories about your upbringing, your experiences, your advantages. They'll construct elaborate explanations for why you can be who you are, while they cannot. Anything to avoid the simple truth that they could choose this power at any moment. The study intensifies because you represent something they thought was impossible, a person who doesn't need their approval to exist fully. You're living proof that their entire social ecosystem is optional. You become their obsession because you're the one who got away. You escaped the matrix they're still trapped in. You found the exit door they didn't even know existed. Their analysis becomes desperate because your existence challenges their fundamental beliefs about how the world works. You're not following the rules they've been taught are immutable. You're not seeking the validation they've been told is necessary. You're not playing the game they think everyone must play. The more they study you, the more they realize that the gap between you and them isn't about circumstances or luck or talent. It's about choice. And that terrifies them more than anything else. You've become a walking mirror, and that's the most dangerous thing about you. Not a mirror that reflects what people want to see, but one that shows them exactly what they're avoiding. Every interaction with you becomes an uncomfortable confrontation with their own compromises. Watch their faces when you speak your truth without cushioning it in polite disclaimers. Watch how they shift when you make decisions without running them through committee. Watch how they scramble to fill the silence when you don't rush to smooth over awkward moments. Your refusal to negotiate your worth makes them question every discount they've offered on their own. Your clarity makes their confusion unbearable. And the most unsettling part, you're not even trying to expose them. You're just existing authentically, and apparently that's enough to shatter every carefully constructed illusion in a 50-foot radius. You're broadcasting on a channel most people don't even know exists. It's like you're speaking in colors while they're still limited to black and white. Your frequency disrupts their regularly scheduled programming. Literally, their thought patterns short-circuit around you. Their usual anxiety loops get interrupted. Their rehearsed responses suddenly sound ridiculous, even to them. You're a walking EMP for fake energy. This isn't some mystical nonsense, it's practical physics. When someone operating at main character frequency enters a space full of extras, the dissonance is palpable. It's like a tuning fork struck in a room full of out-of-tune instruments. Everything either rises to match your pitch or reveals how off-key it's been all along. Some people will physically feel it, that slight discomfort in their chest, that inexplicable need to either move closer or create distance. They're feeling the gap between who they are and who they're pretending to be, and your presence makes that gap impossible to ignore. You've developed immunity to things that used to devastate you. Rejection doesn't sting the same way when you've already accepted yourself completely. Criticism loses its power when you're no longer seeking external validation. Failure becomes just another plot point in a story that you know ends with your evolution. It's not that you've become heartless or disconnected. You've just realized that most of what people call connection is just mutual performance. Most of what they call caring is just codependence dressed up in nice clothes. You still feel deeply, you just no longer let those feelings write your script. When you don't need what everyone else is desperately seeking, validation, approval, belonging, you become incomprehensible. When you're not hungry for the same things, you can't be controlled by the same methods. You've become unreadable to people who navigate the world by reading others. You've become unpredictable to those who rely on patterns. You've become dangerous to those who depend on everyone following the same script. What you've done is break the fundamental paradigm that keeps most people trapped. The idea that they need permission to be powerful. You've stopped waiting for someone to discover you, to validate you, to give you the leading role. You cast yourself and started filming. This break in the paradigm creates a disturbance in the force. Every time you make a choice from main character energy, you're essentially proving that the entire system is optional. Every time you succeed without following the rules, you're showing others that the rules were always suggestions disguised as laws. This isn't a destination, it's an ongoing process. Main character energy isn't something you achieve and then coast on. It's something you choose moment by moment, scene by scene. It's the constant choice to show up as yourself, rather than as who you think others want you to be. Some days the pressure to return to a supporting role will be intense. The world is designed for followers, for extras, for people who don't question the script. Being a main character means swimming against that current constantly. You can't unknow what you now know. You can't unfeel what it's like to move through the world unapologetically. You can't go back to asking permission to exist fully. The transformation is irreversible. You've embraced the villain arc when necessary, because sometimes the main character has to be the antagonist in someone else's story. Sometimes growth looks like betrayal to people who benefited from your smallness. Sometimes evolution looks like abandonment to those who needed you to stay the same. You're not actually the villain, you're just refusing to be an NPC in your own life. You're refusing to deliver lines that don't align with your truth. You're refusing to play roles that require you to pretend you're less than you are. You've gamified your entire existence. Every challenge becomes a level to complete. Every setback a plot twist to navigate. Every success or achievement to unlock. You've turned your life into the most engaging game you've ever played, and you're both the player and the prize. The maintenance requires constant vigilance. Not paranoia, but awareness. You must consistently choose authenticity over acceptance, truth over comfort, growth over stagnation. Each day presents new opportunities to either strengthen your protagonist energy or dilute it. You've learned that maintaining this energy means being comfortable with being uncomfortable. It means accepting that you'll often be the only one in the room who sees things clearly. It means bearing the weight of consciousness in a world that prefers to stay asleep. The ongoing process includes regular recalibration. You must constantly assess whether your actions align with your authentic self, or if you've started performing again. The gravitational pull toward conformity is strong, and even main characters can find themselves drifting back toward the script. You've developed internal warning systems. When you catch yourself explaining too much, seeking too much approval, or dimming too much of your light, you course correct immediately. You've become your own director, constantly calling cut when the scene doesn't feel authentic. You've also learned that being the main character doesn't mean being the only character. You've become skilled at recognizing other people's authentic selves and calling them forward. You've learned to inspire without intimidating, to lead without dominating, to shine without overshadowing. The ongoing process includes managing your energy like a precious resource. You've learned to say no to energy vampires, yes to energy givers, and maybe to everything else. You've become ruthlessly selective about where you invest your time, attention, and emotional energy. Most importantly, you've learned that maintaining protagonist energy requires you to stay connected to your purpose. Your mission isn't just to be authentic. It's to be so authentically yourself that you give others permission to do the same. You've become a living example of what's possible when someone chooses themselves over the crowd. So here you are, chosen one, the main character who makes everyone else feel like extras, not because you diminish them, but because your authenticity highlights their performance. Not because you're better, but because you're real in a world of rehearsed interactions. You've discovered the ultimate truth. We're all main characters who've been convinced to play supporting roles. You just remembered first. You just refused to forget again. You just decided that your story was worth telling authentically. And now you move through the world like someone who knows the secret. That reality bends around those who refuse to bend themselves. The universe respects those who respect themselves enough to stop performing. That main character energy isn't about being the center of attention, it's about being the center of your own existence. The credits aren't rolling. This isn't the end. This is just the beginning of a story where you're finally unapologetically the lead. And everyone else, they're just trying to figure out their role in a reality where you've changed the entire genre. Welcome to your life. The director's cut, the unedited version, the story where you're not just the main character, you're the only character that matters in your own existence. And that terrifies them, and that's exactly how it should be.